within a few months it will be glaringly apparent to the coalition that they could and should have made the recent federal election about vigorously opposing Labor's energy policies and the insanity of pursuing net zero. As I mentioned here last week, and as I write in my editorial in this week's Spectator Australia, a recent opinion poll by the Institute of Public Affairs shows some 56% of Australians are primarily interested in the affordability of their electricity, whilst only a pathetic 21% prioritise meeting the net zero emissions by 2050 target. According to Deputy Executive Director of the IPA, Daniel Wild, quote, despite the federal election, mainstream Australians simply do not believe net zero is in their interests. At a time of record and rising energy bills, 79% want affordability and reliability as the government's focus, end of quote. There are several poignant ironies in the above finding, not least of which is that Daniel Wild, an articulate and charismatic individual familiar to Sky audiences, ran as a Liberal candidate for the Adelaide outer suburban lower house seat of Spence in the recent election. Although Labor comfortably won the seat, it is clear from the large number of voters who opted for One Nation, for the trumpeted Patriots, or for Family First as their first choice, that had Daniel been permitted to prosecute the case for abandoning net zero with the same passion he and many others opposed the Voice, he would almost certainly, in my opinion, have been victorious. Moreover, recent actions by the Queensland LNP government of David Crisafulli, clearly now the most important Liberal politician in this country, the decision to not only keep coal mines open but to make possible the banning of the voracious renewables wind turbine industry suggests the public is far less sympathetic to net zero than the chattering classes would have us believe. The results of the election, warped perversely by our bizarre compulsory preferential voting system, does not reflect the first choices of the population, with 2/3 of Australians not wanting Labor as their first choice. Indeed, as Michael Bowen points out in his brilliant Spectator Australia column this week, quote, never before in Australia's political history has a majority government been so vulnerable to the preferencing decisions made by leaders of third parties. There is the stark fact that only 8 Labor MPs were elected on the first choice of voters on 3rd of May, with the remaining 86 requiring preferences from other candidates to win. Astonishing. The same affliction also hit the coalition, writes Michael, with every one of the Liberal Party's 28 MPs failing to win on first preferences, a disastrous collapse since 2013 when the Abbott-led Liberals won 38 seats on first preferences. The tragedy and irony of the recent election is that the coalition behaved like Coles to Labor's Woolies, simply mimicking whatever was on offer and keeping any genuine product differentiation to the barest minimum. Yet only 18 months earlier, the coalition had pulled off the extraordinary Voice victory against all odds by unambiguously following the oldest rule in adversarial political systems: oppose, 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 and then oppose some more. All around the world, from New York to New Zealand, net zero is on the way out. Not only has net zero proved an economic and industrial disaster for countries across the West, but the reality is now dawning on most sensible and pragmatic politicians that the successful economies of the future will be built on artificial intelligence, AI, and that AI relies on vast amounts of energy, and that renewables are incapable of meeting that future demand, no matter how prolific those renewables may be. Which is why, laughably, certain high-tech companies are investing in nuclear power plants at the same time as the Australian Liberal Party is contemplating mimicking Labor even further and abandoning support for nuclear energy. It is hard to imagine a more depressing or asinine party room conversation than that between the Conservatives in the Liberal Party and the bedwetting variety of renewables shills, as the latter desperately try to please their tealish renewables masters and power brokers by parroting climate cult alarmism mantras. To make matters worse, as the Bowen climate and energy masterplan of green hydrogen fueling a renewable superpower industry collapses into a Monty Python-style absurdist farce, and we learn that household electricity bills are to continue to rise Dramatically, no surprise there, the coalition can barely bring itself to confront the inevitable debate about ditching net zero, which is why the unequivocal pronouncements over the past few days by two alternative leaders of the coalition, Andrew Hastie and Senator Matt Canavan, are so important. Using a clever metaphor, Mr. Hastie informed a bewildered Patricia Karvelas on the ABC that he would no longer be wearing a net zero straitjacket.
Do you think that policy should be reviewed, your commitment to net zero by 2050?
The question of net zero, again, that's a straitjacket that I'm already getting out of. The real question is, should Australian families and businesses be paying more for their electricity? And should we allow this sort of hypocrisy at the heart of our economy to continue, whereby we sell coal and gas to India and China and we deny it to our own people? That's the question that I think we need to answer. Nuclear should be part of our mix, but I think the first incremental step should be to remove the moratorium. And if we remove the moratorium, then we should let capital markets do their work. And so if there is the potential for nuclear power in this country, we'll see people invest in that.
Now that's leadership. It shouldn't be that hard, Libs. At the same time, Matt Canavan reiterated his antipathy towards net zero and the obscene profits and economic vandalism of the renewables industry, pointing out that some 88% of locals in Rockhampton had opposed the latest mass wind turbine factory at Moonlight Range.
Don't give a stuff too much about the global investors who want to rape and pillage our native bushland. Sure, they want to make money. Good luck to them, but I'm not on their side. I'm on the side of people who want to protect the native bushland of this country. That Moonlight Range they were going to devastate with 280-metre high wind turbines was an absolute environmental disgrace. And I'm sick and tired of, no offence, Linda, but people who don't even come up and visit these areas saying that somehow this is a terrible thing to stop these projects and protect our bushland. I've been there. I've spoken to the residents. They do not want this project, and I think those Australians deserve to have their voice heard wherever it is, in Brisbane or Canberra, and not run over roughshod by international investors that the Labor Party seems unable to say no to.
Again, that is the quality of leadership and argument that Australians deserve. Now, if the net zero fiasco is not already over, it soon will be. Net zero will inevitably be joining the Betamax and bell-bottom flares as silly items from some future game of Trivial Pursuits. President Donald Trump has already eviscerated UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer for Britain's net zero insanity. It is with a certain amount of pleasure that we can look forward to Anthony Albanese perched awkwardly on the hot seat in the Oval Office as the US President makes clear to little old Australia just how lonely and out of touch we are on energy. And by the way, just wait till Mr. Trump learns about our anti-free speech legislation. Indeed, with Marco Rubio this week announcing a ban on entering the US of those officials from foreign countries who censor free speech. Will Albo even be allowed in? But back to the coalition. Great political leaders must do what it says on the pack. Lead. Peter Dutton led on opposing the voice, led on nuclear energy, and led on support for Israel. But when it came to the crunch, he was incapable of leading mainstream Australians in a battle with the Labor Party on the single most important issue facing this nation, net zero. Can Susan Lee lead? Or will she follow in her predecessor's footsteps, pander to the greed of the renewables investors who seem to hold such sway over the Liberal Party, and carry on with this net zero nonsense? Well, it shouldn't take too long to find out. With the demotion of Senator Nampijinpa Price, who was one of the key warriors of the successful No to the Voice campaign, and the elevation of individuals such as Julian Leeser, who voted yes to the Voice, the signs aren't great.